Today, we're going to talk about The Last Duel, a film based on a true story that highlights the brutal reality of medieval justice and the role women played in the fight for truth. This film tells the story of the last legal duel in France, where two knights fought to settle a dispute over a serious accusation. Let's explore how this gripping drama shines a light on the dark history of power, revenge, and justice. The Last Duel is a historical drama based on real events. The story focuses on the last judicial duel in France, which took place in 1386. Two knights, Jean de Carrouges and Jacques le Gris, fight in a duel to settle a dispute arising from accusations of rape. This is not just a story about revenge or justice, it's about truth itself, and how it can be shaped by the power dynamics of society. The film tells three different versions of the same event, through the eyes of each of the main characters, Jacques, Jean, and Marguerite. We see how each of them perceives the events differently, revealing a multi-layered story. Jacques le Gris, Matt Damon, a knight who risks everything to protect his wife's honor. He decides to challenge Jean to a duel, believing that both his honor and his wife's honor must be restored. Jean de Carrouges, Adam Driver, the man accused of the rape. He is portrayed as someone who doesn't fully comprehend the consequences of his actions, but his perception of his innocence is radically different from what Marguerite tells. Marguerite de Carrouges, Jodie Comer, the woman whose life and reputation are put to the test. Her perspective on the events is the perspective of a victim whose suffering is largely ignored and dismissed by society. The duel, which is the film's climax, is not just personal revenge, but a symbol of the power and justice of the time. The significance of this duel is that the victory of one of the participants would not only prove one side right, but also serve as the final resolution in the legal process. This duel was meant to settle once and for all whether Jacques or Jean was in the right. However, for Marguerite, her husband's victory does not guarantee justice, as her own suffering is overlooked, and society is not ready to acknowledge her voice in the judicial system. Now that we've been introduced to the main characters in the plot, let's move on to analyze how this film uses historical facts to highlight important issues like justice, equality, and the role of women in society. One of the central themes of The Last Duel is how truth is perceived differently by each character. The film presents three distinct versions of the same event: Jacques' version, Jean's version, and Marguerite's version. Each character's perspective is shaped by their personal biases, societal status, and motivations. This approach emphasizes that truth is not always objective, but rather, it is influenced by the lens through which it is viewed. For example, Jacques, as a man of honor, views the situation as a challenge to his dignity and that of his wife. Jean, on the other hand, sees himself as an innocent man who is wrongly accused. Marguerite's version of events, however, is one of trauma and survival, but it is often dismissed or ignored by both men. This narrative structure not only makes the film more engaging, but also forces the audience to question the reliability of each perspective. Who is telling the truth, and who is merely trying to justify their actions? Another significant aspect of the film is how it portrays gender relations and the position of women in medieval society. Marguerite, despite being the victim, has no agency in the legal system. Her voice is largely disregarded, and her experience is seen through the filter of the male characters. In the 14th century, women were often considered property, and their testimonies were less valued than those of men. The film shows how this reality is reflected in the judicial process, where the woman's trauma is overshadowed by the men's honor and reputation. Marguerite's struggle for justice is a reminder of the ongoing fight for women's rights and equality. The film highlights the brutal consequences of a system that fails to listen to women and often gives more weight to male voices, regardless of the truth. At its core, The Last Duel is about justice, or rather the lack of it. The film asks whether the judicial system of that time could truly deliver justice, or whether it was more concerned with upholding societal norms and protecting the powerful. The duel itself is not a fair trial, but a form of barbaric revenge. Jacques and Jean's motivations are not just about proving who is right, but about protecting their reputations and personal pride. The idea of justice in the film is linked to the idea of honor, but it ultimately fails to bring about a fair resolution. The brutal and public nature of the duel questions the very concept of justice and whether it is ever truly served when power dynamics are involved. The film is set in a time when law and order were governed by a rigid feudal system, where knights held significant power and the lives of women were often controlled by the men around them. The Last Duel effectively conveys the harshness of medieval society, where disputes were often settled through violence rather than reason. While the film is based on real events, it also serves as a reminder of how far we have come in terms of legal rights and gender equality. It poses the question, how much have we really changed? Are there still echoes of the past in today's legal and social systems? In conclusion, The Last Duel is not just a historical drama. It is a film that challenges the audience to think critically about issues of truth, justice, and gender dynamics. By presenting a layered, complex narrative, the film encourages viewers to reflect on how these themes resonate in today's world. The final duel may resolve the conflict in the film, but the larger questions about fairness, power, and equality remain unanswered, leaving the audience to ponder what true justice really means.